The best Doc Martens alternatives that are actually good. Doc Martens, they're not great boots, but they're still better than most alternatives that people talk about in videos like this. So after like 7 years of making content about the boot industry, I'm telling you, there are 3 alternatives to the Doc Martens 1460 boot that are actually decent. This is actually my second time filming this video because the first time, the point of this video was to show a new boot that is getting a lot of hype as like the premium Doc Martens alternative. But as I kept thinking about it, I realized like it isn't really that great. So let's talk about it and all the other ones here as well. I just want to make it first really clear that yes, there are boots that are $700, $1,000 that are superior to the boots that are on this list. But I think it's stupid when like a YouTuber does a video on alternatives to like a $150 boot to talk about a $1,000 boot with like Japanese horsehide and stitched down construction. Like, yeah, okay, but the amount of money something costs is also a factor when talking about what's a good buy, especially when you're talking about what is good to buy in relation to something at the price point of Doc Martens. I'm taking the price into account as to like what is in roughly the same ballpark that could be a better buy, depending on what you like out of a boot. So why would you want an alternative to Doc Martens though? Because they are bad. This is the most popular and top selling boot from Doc Martens. It is called the 1460. It costs between 130 and 170 bucks, depending on where you get them. And this is what we're working off of today. Here are 5 reasons Doc Martens are not great. Number 1, the leather on Docs is very thin and crappy and prone to cracking. An even better complaint is that Docs are sold as a Goodyear welted boot, which signifies that it's resolable. But because the welt is cheap and synthetic, instead of the normal vegetable tanned leather that are used on high quality boots, and because Doc Martens attaches their sole by melting the rubber sole onto the synthetic welt with flame, that does give the boots a much stronger bond with their sole than a sneaker does. Yes, so it is vastly more durable than a typical sneaker. Yes, that is true. But a problem with this construction is that because of that synthetic welt and the melted sole, it's not really resolable when the sole eventually wears down. Some cobblers do specialize in resoling Doc Martens. There's a market for anything out there, but it's much harder to resole, much harder to find a cobbler who will do it. And if you do manage to find one who will do it, it is likely going to cost you more than a new pair of boots would, you know? The soles are super soft and comfy, I will give them that, but they do have a reputation for cracking in the cold, and more importantly, the lugs here are so shallow that they lose grip very quickly after somewhere. After like a season or 2, you can lose your grip on these. There's no shank in Docs. That's a hard piece of material, usually steel in the midfoot, and the construction in there. It helps with stability, because most boots are about stability, right? Docs are more about softness, so that's like fine, that's what they're going for, right? But still, a lot of folks find that spending all day on their feet gives them sore feet when they're wearing soft shoes, like sneakers or boots without a shank. That's why so many blue collar jobs recommend boots, even if they're not the kind of jobs where you're handling hazardous materials or anything like that. Doc Martens also, and this is really stupid, they don't do half sizes. It's like the biggest boot brand in the world, and they don't do half sizes. Like, I mean, they're not literally the world's biggest boot brand, but almost everyone who does half sizes is a smaller company, yet Docs cannot devote the resources to making well-fitting boots. Someone always says, I found some random website somewhere that sells them, fine, but go on docmartens.com as an American to buy these boots. There are no half sizes. And also, the fit on Doc Martens in general is very blobby and generic, maybe to make up for how imprecise they have to be, given they're not catering to half of all foot sizes by not doing half sizes. Although also, the fact there's not really any leather underfoot on Doc Martens also means it doesn't conform to the shape of the foot over time in the way that most more expensive, more leathery boots do. It's just, there's a lot of elements that people who like boots, they say is missing from the Doc Martens. Let's talk about better alternatives. Solovair. Most guys, when they want something better than Doc Martens, they look at Solovair's High Shine Derby. Why is that? For one, this one's made in England, right? And it costs us 219 bucks. We're talking about Americans here. I live in the States, just like my accent. It is cheaper than Doc Martens made in England boots. So if the England thing is really important to you, or the deal breaker with the 1460, you might be convinced to get a made in England Doc Marten, but actually this is a made in England Doc Marten and it's better than Doc Martens, and it's actually cheaper than it, right? It's really similar to Doc Martens as well. And they're similar in large part because this boot is made in a factory that used to make Doc Martens when they were more likely to be made in England. The factory lost the contract, they changed the color of the yellow stitching, and they went right on making the boots. I mean, I oversimplified that, I'm being a bit flippant, but basically what happened, right? Plus, Solovair's leather is the most similar of these alternatives in that it's very, very glossy, like the Doc's leather, but it is thicker and more oily and more durable. And While Solovair also uses that flame melting thing that Docs use for the soling, and they are about as hard to resole as Docs, unfortunately, Solovair's construction is just more robust. It has a thicker heel counter, thicker fiberboard, it has a felt midsole that won't compress as much as Doc Martens. They do have a shank to give you some stability as well, and the lugs are a little bit deeper as well. Yeah, finally the sole. I think the biggest upside of Docs is the sole. It is indeed very comfy and soft and bouncy. They say it was originally designed for limiting foot pain. Solovair's soles are better though, in my opinion. My buddy Weston at Rose Anvil, actually, he's got a YouTube channel where he split them in half and ran a bunch of tests. He actually objectively found that there were better soles. Solovair's sole is both harder, as in more durable, and more bouncy. Technically, it had a higher short A and higher responsiveness, which is actually possible in part because Solovair has a finer lattice under the sole, so it has fewer high pressure points. You can see when you're looking at both of these, they have like sort of like a grid underneath the sole called a lattice. And that makes a difference with like load dispersal and stuff like that. But if you really like the look of Docs, I'm afraid you cannot get the iconic yellow stitching on anything because it looks like Doc Martens trademarked that and they are quite happy to sue about it if someone tries using yellow stitching themselves. Solovair has these kind of gray steel colored stitching. Aesthetically, otherwise, they really are pretty much the same while being just better all over. Now, for many of you, that's where this discussion ends. Doc Martens cost some 150 bucks. Solovair's are 219 bucks. The British-made Docs are 260 bucks. Solovair's a compromise right between the middle of them. Boom. And to be clear, I think how much money something costs is a perfectly, incredibly reasonable factor to base your decision on. Even if that means you get the Docs instead of Solovair, because that $50 difference, that can be a lot of money to some folks. Like that's fine. I don't think you're an idiot if 50 bucks is what decides it for you and you're just gonna get the Doc Martens. That's all good. But there are some people for whom price is not as much of a factor as like components and labor. And here we come to the Shaman boot from Goral, made in Sheffield, UK. Now, this company does not want me to call them a Doc Martens alternative, to be clear. This is not officially a Doc Martens alternative, but they're not paying me for this video, so I can say whatever I want. All right, I can't say that. And I can't say that Goral intended this boot to be the Doc Martens killer because the email they sent me about this boot's release just winkingly called it the DM killer. That could be referring to anything, you know? Could be referring to Dean Martin, who died of emphysema. These boots are emphysema. But anyway, why is this a premium Doc Martens alternative? The Shaman boot has a bit of a lower profile toe. The shaft isn't quite as high. There's this kind of mudguard thing along the side I'm gonna get into, and the leather is a bit more matte. You should know that's because generally when leather's very shiny and glossy, it's not very high quality, to be real. But a big reason the Shaman stands out among these Doc Martens alternatives is that it is made with the most beloved boot leather on planet Earth. It's called Chrome XL from Chicago's Hoyne Leather Company, and every high quality casual boot brand, like whether it's a $200 boot or a $1,000 boot, they have a Chrome XL boot and it's usually the brand's best seller. It's like just what people want from a boot leather. Like it's tough but reasonably flexible. It has a nice pull-up effect from all the oils and waxes in it and it just ages really beautifully. Now that's not the case when you get black Chrome XL. You don't get the cool highs and lows you get from a boot aging. That's just kind of the thing with black leather, but you can get these Shamans in a few other shades of Chrome XL. Doc Martens also sells a Chrome XL version or two as well, to be fair. Like of course it's more expensive. A potential downside of high quality leather though, believe it or not, is that it is more likely to get this kind of creasing here, wrinkling, loose grain. They're all technically different, but for the average person, it's the same thing. It is wrinkling. Docs and Solivairs are so sanded down and so smooth and glossy and coated that they don't have any of the character that makes leather cool. But that also means that they avoid stuff like this that can happen when you're getting a more natural product, right? Moving on to the construction, there's such a song and dance about the sophisticated construction of these boots over Doc Martens. And while it is superior to Docs and Solovair, it's still incredibly hard to resole. Goral on their site, they call this a resolable Blake stitch, but the problem here is that they have a sort of hybrid Blake stitch cup sole construction. We'll get a bit too into the weeds if I get into it, but basically it is innovative and lightweight and flexible. But because of how innovative and unique it is, this sole can only really be replaced with one of Goral's own soles. So you'll probably have to mail them to the UK to get resoled by Goral, which all up it'll definitely cost a good 200 bucks with shipping and the resole operation and everything. Now, Goral did say they plan to set up a US resoler by the end of 2024. I'm dating this video by saying that. I'll pin a comment down below if one of those opens. But no matter what, you're still gonna mail your boots if you want to resole these. 99% chance you cannot just go to a normal cobbler to get these resoled. But the materials are still better, right? Goral does have a shank and it's steel. The layers underfoot go leather topped foam for shock absorption, then leather, felt filling, and then the rubber outsole. There is no leather underfoot anywhere in the Docs or Solovair. But in addition to being more or less as much of a headache to resole as the other boots, they also don't do half sizes, and they only do 8 sizes right now, actually. Now they do wide sizes, which is an advantage, and it helps as like a midway point if you are a half size. Like sometimes sizing down and going wide can give the same effect of getting a half size, and you should know that. I've done that before with brands. And also, even though they don't do the half sizes like Doc's, and Solovair does do half sizes, these still do fit better than Doc's because it's just more ergonomic, foot-shaped last by like a company that's pretty serious about their footwear, like more so than Doc Martens is. But hard to resole, no half sizes, and it costs $390, well over twice the price of Doc Martens. When I first got these, they were $445. Last week, they were $383. It's pretty common with newer models with online brands to do this, so they try and work out what price converts the best. But whatever they cost, you know, it's $250 more than Doc's or more. And they are made in England, but that's just too expensive for a not resolable boot without half sizes, I'm sorry. So let's move on to the last alternative. And if you like boots, I'm sure you're absolutely sick of hearing YouTubers talk about Thursday Boot Company, but I'm afraid they just make the best Doc Martens alternative. Like they just do. This brand has been around for 10 years, but only very recently did they put out a dedicated, again, they don't say this in their marketing, no one does, but they only just did a proper Doc Martens alternative because they released the Stomper boots in a version without a side zip. So this boot, you can still get this with a side zip. They just released one that looks like this. And now this is a very, very worthy substitute for the Doc Marten 1460. This is actually made like an actual good boot. Like it's got a real Goodyear welt, made of vegetable tanned leather, and it can be sold by any neighborhood cobbler. So the longevity is much greater. All these boots are very water resistant. Another benefit of Goodyear welts, even when it's with a bad synthetic welt. Nonetheless, yeah, this has all the benefits of a Goodyear welt. So the construction is, there's a leather midsole and cork filling in the welt cavity with a rubber outsole, which is really the minimum for any good boot. The insole is not leather, which does bother some guys who are like boot traditionalists, right? Like I encounter them, of course, and they often like leather on leather on leather. There are benefits to that, but a lot of folks, especially, you know, more modern, younger folks, they prefer better shock absorption, right? That's sort of the trade-off, the compromise you've got to figure out when you're getting boots, if you want it to be really, really stable or nice and soft and squishy. Thursday kind of compromises between those two areas by using a leather-topped pour-on foam insole on these Stompers and most if not all their other boots. So what that means is you're not getting as bouncy a feeling as these other boots here, these ones, but you're getting better shock absorption than most Goodyear welted boots on the market. Even those like $650 ones I was talking about, or like Red Wings Blacksmith, which is another great resolable boot that might scratch your itch for a chunky black boot that will last longer than Doc Martens. It's also the only one I'm mentioning in this list that's made in America, but those boots, Red Wing boots, have really bad shock absorption because they're made very traditionally. But Thursday's got the same combat boot look as well, all the way to the tall height, the pull tab, and no speed hooks up here. The black leather is glossier and shinier than Goral's Chrome XL boot, although not as shiny as the Doc's. The silhouette is just a little bit sleeker and lower profile than Doc's, if that's your deal breaker. Thursday does also have a more bulky, similar-ish boot called the Hero boot though, which I understand is coming out in a black leather as well. So you might prefer that one if the chunkiness is really important to you. This is $235, and for whatever reason, the Hero, $199. Maybe it's the pull tab, I don't know, but those they're differently priced. And that is still pricier than a $150 Doc Marten. It's not made in England like the Goral and the Solovair, but if you don't mind them being made in Mexico, I think I'm being pretty objective when I say that even though I'm a boot guy on YouTube and we all talk about Thursday too much, they've figured out how to make well-made boots at a lower price than anyone else. And like I've been doing the research, man. I would have loved to say any other brand, but it does look like they've got the best alternative. But some people value different things. Maybe the made in England thing matters more to you than anything else, or the glossy leather or the chunky look, that's more important to you. Whatever you prefer, let me know in the comments what you think is the market's best Doc Martens alternative, keeping in mind these $150 boots, and tell me why, and tell me what I missed, and that's my video, and I'll see you in the next one. I look forward to the discussion on this one.